How can I make justice to this book? How can I be unbiased when talking about my favorite book of all time? Well, I don't think I can, but I'll try my best. Okay, so today we're gonna be reviewing The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This is book 1 in the Kingkiller Chronicles series and the best book I've ever read. So I read this book for the first time last year and I absolutely loved it from start to finish. So this year I thought it would be a cool idea to reread it, to see if it was as good as I thought it was the first time around. And it was better. I have stolen princesses back from sleeping Barrow kings. I burned down the town of Trebon. I have spent the night with Florian and left with both my sanity and my life. I was expelled from the university at a younger age than most people are allowed in. I tread path by moonlight that others fear to speak during day. I have talked to gods, loved women, and written songs that make the minstrels weep. You might have heard of me. This is Patrick Rothfuss's promise at the beginning of the Kingkiller Chronicles series. This is what we signed up for when we decided to start The Name of the Wind. The life story of an innkeeper that is hiding from both his true name and a path full of adventures, misfortunes, love, betrayal, tragedy. Years after the events that take place in this book, a chronicle arrives at the Waystone Inn looking for the infamous Quoth to uncover the truth behind all the myth that had been created about him. Quoth is gonna need 3 days to tell this story, and The Name of the Wind is the first one of them. I will give you some spoiler-free thoughts before jumping straight into dissecting this masterpiece. We currently have 2 days of the story covered, the third book coming someday, hopefully. The book is great. The writing is beyond beautiful. Rothfuss's prose is just flawless and marvels me in every page. The world building is awesome. It's both big and contained at the same time. The amount of lore that this book has is crazy. There's a bunch of hinted things that I didn't pick up the first time that I read this book, but when I reread it, there were so many, there's such an aura of mystery and intent that just blowed my mind all the time. The character part is a little tricky as is a life story and it's written in first person. So the only character that we get to know fully is Quoth himself. And he's a really complex guy. He's a really complex character and a controversial one. People either love Quoth or hate him. And usually that is the thing that decides if people actually enjoy the book or not. The magic systems are super interesting. There's one of them that is pretty well explained and it has such a logic to it that you look at it, it kind of reminds me of the feeling that I got when I read Mistborn, that I look at this magic and I feel like it does make sense. And on the other hand, it has another magic system that is totally mysterious and it's really cool, but you don't really understand anything about it. Plot-wise, as I said, this is a life story and life is not straightforward. There are a lot of times where this book might seem a little bit directionless, and it's true, but I feel like none of this meandering is without purpose. I have the feeling that in every single sentence there is intention, and I think this is one of the most interesting things about this story. The Name of the Wind is slowly becoming a classic of the fantasy literature. And although it has a lot of mixed opinions about it, it is in general a really well-loved book. I can see the criticisms that people make about it. And I may agree on some of them, especially in terms of character and pace. But there's so many wonderful and gorgeous things about these books that I can't help but being engaged and consumed by this story and the world that Rothfuss has created. I love this book. Well, those are my spoiler-free thoughts. Now we'll dive deep into spoilers. So if you haven't read the book yet, I recommend you to close the tab, go pick up the book, and start reading. All right, for this section, I did my best to structure my thoughts to at least try to condense them and sound like a coherent human being and not just a gushy fangirl that could ramble on and on about it forever. So, for the sake of the story, it felt right to separate it into 7 different topics. First, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the writing because I already mentioned this, but I have to say that this book may have a lot of flaws, but the writing is not one of them. You can criticize the story, you can criticize Quoth as a character, but you cannot deny that the writing of the story is just beautiful. Rothfuss's prose is so gorgeous that I'm not exaggerating when I say that it makes me want to cry sometimes when I'm reading. It has a way to sound lyrical without feeling too flowery. It can describe the most mundane things and go straight to the point in such a beautiful way. I cannot describe this writing as anything else as gorgeous and beautiful. It's spectacular. There's so many passages that I love to go through over and over again. And although I tend to highlight my books, this one in particular, there are many things that I just highlight or made little notes because I love the way that things are phrased, especially when Quoth talks about music. So let's talk a little bit about the plot. So when I first read this book and I learned about the murder of Quoth Troop and his parents, I thought like, oh well, this is gonna be a revenge story, which is sort of is because it's Quoth motivation, but it isn't at the same time because there's so many other things that are more important at the moment than the revenge itself. It actually falls into second, third place for most of the book. This is Quoth's story. It's not about him just getting revenge on the Chandrian, on finding the Emir. No, it's about his life. And actually, there are 3 years of his life where he didn't even think about that because he was so poor and trying to survive that didn't even enter his mind, and he didn't even let himself think about it because it was too painful. I think the part in Tarbian, the 3 years he spent there being on the streets, begging, stealing, it was just such a portrayal of poverty. He emphasizes so much in how it really feels to be poor, how poverty works, how Quoth has to fight so much for so little, and it's so heart-wrenching. Actually, Quoth seems to remember about the Chandrian and the Emir and about this revenge when he listens to the story from Scarpi at Tarbian. And then he goes to university and everything starts to move a little bit faster from that point. But at the same time, when we get to university, the book kind of seems to be a little bit meandering because we're just living with Quoth, his start at the university, the place that he always dreamed to be in. And I don't know, it's really difficult to talk about the plot in this book because in reality, it's a very interesting story of a man that has been through a lot. He has suffered, he has had adventures, he has traveled. I don't know what else to say. 3 characters. Okay, so as I said before, this is a first-person written story. It's narrated by Quoth himself. So he's the only character that we get to know fully because we are in his head all the time. Quoth is a really interesting and complex character. People either love him or hate him because, okay, Quoth is a genius. He is insanely intelligent and he knows that. And he's so arrogant because of that fact. He's actually sort of a jerk. And I love him, but I hate him sometimes. People say he's a Ken and Mary Sue character because of that, because he's perfect in his own eyes and everything comes easy for him, which I don't know where they get that, because Quoth has to fight so hard for so little. His extreme poverty doesn't allow him to do what he would like to, and that is just so real. Granted, he is a genius, he has a really high IQ, but he messes up all the time. Actually, most of the myth about him are some sort of twisted story about how he messed up something and people thought it was heroic. Talking about other characters, we cannot fully know them because we are in Quoth's head all the time. We just see them through his eyes. But there are really cool characters out there. Ori is one of my favorites. She's this mysterious girl that hides in the under thing, which is like a whole world below the university. She's so mysterious, she's so beautiful. I love their scenes together, how they talk to each other, how Quoth gave her a name is, oh, this is so beautiful. I love Aladdin too, the master namer. He's just plain crazy and insane, but so wise in some twisted ways. I don't know. Dana is another important character that I personally don't really like. I even Quoth says so at some point in the story. She's cruel. She's not evil. She's not, but there's something about her that I don't trust her and I don't like her so much. And in the interludes, we get to know Bast, who is a really fun and engaging character. He's charming and he's dangerous and he loves Quoth so much, and he's in so much pain because Quoth is not himself. He's hiding from himself and from the world, and he's losing himself, and Bast feels so much pain because of this. I'll have to make a lot of cuts in this section because I'm rambling a lot. But overall, there are a lot of interesting characters, and Quoth is a really interesting one as well. Even if you don't like him, there's a lot of growth to his character. From when he was a little kid in his troop, then the despair he felt when they murdered him and had to live in the street for 3 years. Then when he got to university, then when he started playing the lute again. There's just so much to him. Moving on, let's talk about the world building. I'm gonna go through this fast because I want to get to other points, but the world building here is amazing. Temeran is a really big world that we don't fully see in this book, but we know is there. We just stay in the Commonwealth through the entire book. We don't see Vintas or Silt, however that's pronounced. But we know they're there, and the university is such a cosmopolitan place that we meet people from these places. There are different languages, there are different fashion, there are different mannerisms, and that shows us that there's really a world outside the place that we are set in this book. And I just wanted to point out that it's really well written because it feels like there's more out there. It doesn't feel like Rothfuss just drew a map to put something surrounding the place where the book takes place, but it feels like we're going to go to these places at some point. They're mentioned a lot. Ambrose, the antagonist, I didn't mention it in the character section. He's horrible. One of Quoth's best friends is from Silt, and he has traveled sometimes speaking in the common tongue, and it just feels real, and I like it. Then 5, let's talk about the lore. As I said in my spoiler-free section, the amount of lore that this book has is insane. And I didn't see them the first time that I read this book. And when I picked it up again, they just blowed my mind. There are a lot of things that I cannot talk about here because we come to know that they are part of the lore in the second book. But oh my God, there's so many things. There's like, for starters, there's something with the number 7. There are 7 Chandrian. There are 7 things that Lady Luckless hides if you take the song seriously. There are 7 words to make someone love you. There's something there. Then you have the 4-plate door that has Valaritas written over it. And then you got the under thing where Ori lives, which we kind of see in the story that there was this old city that was burned, and the university might or might not have been built above this city, and maybe the under thing is the ruins of that city. I don't know. There's a lot of lore here, but one of my favorite things is the naming. The thing about the names, the fact that you have a given name and a true name, like your soul's name, and the fact that it's so dangerous to play with the true name of things just blows my mind. And it has a lot to do with the magic system, which I'm gonna talk about now, but I just wanted to point this out because I think it's so interesting, because there are so many different stories that just change names but are the same stories about the same people. We know that Dena changes her name all the time, but we don't really know if she changes her true name or just her given name. Also, Quoth changed his name to Quote, and he changed his true name, and I think that's why he cannot use sympathy anymore. 6, let's talk about the magic systems. There are 2 magic systems in this world. First is sympathy, which is a way of heart magic system. And it's really interesting because there's so much logic to it. It's almost scientific, and I love that. Sympathy is a form of energy manipulation that requires a lot of skill and concentration. You can link things with sympathy. And the more similar the objects are, the stronger the link is gonna be. This has to do with the power of the mind, because you have to convince your mind that these objects are linked, and if one object moves, the other one is gonna move as well. It's crazy, and it's really difficult to explain, but Rothfuss does a master job with this, and it's so interesting because you can divide your mind in different parts. There's also this thing called the Heart of Stone that is a state of the mind where you can like be free of distractions and emotions, and there's sometimes that Quoth uses the Heart of Stone so he doesn't feel sad, he doesn't feel happy, he doesn't get any emotions, because that can cloud his judgment. It's so good. And the second is a soft magic system, and it's the naming. I already mentioned it in the lore section, but naming is the art of finding the true name of things. So if you find the true name of things, you can control that. So this book is called The Name of the Wind because Quoth wants to find the name of the wind and control it, but the name of the wind changes a lot. So it's really difficult to find it, and it's really difficult to wake your sleeping mind. As Elodin says, he's the master namer, he knows a lot of names, and he's such a mysterious character because of that. There's a lot of lore about names. There's Taborlin the Great, who is a fictional character that used to know the names of everything, and thus he could control everything. He could say the name of the rock and the rock would break. There's not so much explanation about this magic, and that's why it's a soft magic system, but it mixes so well with the lore of this world that is super interesting. And last but not least, we're gonna talk about the music. And it might sound weird to talk about music in a book, But to be honest, I don't think we can discuss the name of the wind properly without talking about music, because it plays such an important role in Quoth's life. Quoth is an edema root to the core. He is a musician. He breathes music. He loves music. He hates listening to music without being able to play his lute. And it shows in every word, every time he expresses his love for music. I think my favorite quotes, my favorite parts in the entire series are where Quoth is playing his lute. In the Aeolian, in Anchors, with Ori, anywhere, or when he is talking about his love for music. I just feel it in every single word he says. I feel his love for music. And it's contagious. I remember the first time that I was reading this book that I put on YouTube and play some random lute song while I was reading these parts because I was so immersed in the story. I'm gonna read a passage of when Quoth saw a lute for the first time after 3 years in Tarbian. I thought it was such a heartbreaking and heartwarming scene that I need to read it. Fingers and strings made a careful conversation, as if their dance described the lines of an infatuation. Then I felt something inside me break, and music began to pour out into the quiet. My fingers danced, intricate and quick. They spun something gossamer and tremulous into the circle of light our fire had made. The music moved like a spider web stirred by a gentle breath. It changed like a leaf twisting as it falls to the ground, and it felt like 3 years waterside in Tarbian, with a hollowness inside you and hands that ached from the bitter cold. Quoth aches, he craves for music so hard, and that's why it's so heartbreaking when we see that he's owner of the third silence and there's no music in the way sewn in, and we don't know why. But it makes me so sad because music is such a part of him life, is such a part of himself, that not having music means that he's worse than you think he is, actually. Okay, I've been filming for ages and my throat hurts. I've talked a lot, but I hope I could condense my thoughts a little bit and structure them so I could express why I love this book so much. I'm sure I left out a bunch of things to talk about, and I would love to keep chatting with you about it in the comments. Let me know what you think about this book, if you liked it, if you didn't, if you agree with me in some points, if you want to point out some other things and we can discuss them. I love talking about this book, so yes. I hope you like this review, and if you want to stay tuned, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, ring the bell, and click on the subscribe button. I will be posting on Mondays and Thursdays. Thank you guys, and see you soon.